This is The Issue, and I am the Ghetto Man. Today's issue, national popular vote laws, a constitutional crisis. Don't go away. We'll be right back. National popular voting laws. They have become a constitutional crisis, and they need to be dealt with. For those of you who don't know what a national popular voting law is, well, it's a law, an unconstitutional law to be sure, that claims to change the Electoral College vote as it applies to a state, and does so without a constitutional amendment. Now, national popular voting laws, on their face, violate Article 4, Section 4 of the U.S. Constitution in that it nullifies a state's right and the right of each citizen of that state to a Republican form of government, and then forces upon the state and the citizens of that state with an unconstitutional, democratic form of government in its stead. The Electoral College is mandated by Article 2, Section 1 of the U.S. Constitution and is the hallmark of our Republican form of government. When electing a president, the Electoral College ensures that each state of the Union gets a vote and protects those votes from the reckless will of the majority, a democracy. You see, everyone that is elected, state and federal, regardless of their political persuasion, must take an oath or affirmation to uphold and defend the U.S. Constitution from all enemies, foreign and domestic. Now, once they take that oath, they are no longer bound by their political party. They are bound by that oath. They are no longer a Democrat, a Republican, socialist, communist, an independent, or any other political persuasion. They are constitutionalists by contract. And from that point forward, they are forbidden by the law of perjury and the law of treason from ever advancing any political agenda that is contrary to the U.S. Constitution. The oath of office prohibits any public servant from tampering with, creating and enforcing any law or policy that is contrary to their oath of office and contrary to the mandates of the U.S. Constitution at the time that they took that oath. Any proposed amendment to the U.S. Constitution must also follow the oath and must follow the U.S. Constitution as written at the time the oath was taken. In other words, the public servant agreed, under the penalty of perjury and treason, that they would not tamper with the U.S. Constitution as written. And this is the oath they take. I, whomever, do solemnly swear and or affirm that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, that I take this obligation freely without mental reservation or purpose of evasion. Now, it's very important. What the person is agreeing to, the contract they're making, is that they are not going to take this oath and then evade that oath by not honoring the Constitution. So it says, without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties of the office on which I'm about to enter, so help me God. Or if they're affirm that. Any public servant that proposes to amend or repeal Article 2, Section 1 of the U.S. Constitution, the Electoral College, is clearly in violation of that oath. They took an oath that they would uphold and defend that, and they said they wouldn't evade that oath. Any changes to the U.S. Constitution must be made pursuant to Article 5. Article 5 outlines the amendment process. The amendment process must follow the mandates of the U.S. Constitution and cannot be used by a public servant who willfully evades their oath by proposing unconstitutional legislation for political gain. proposing an amendment to Article 2, Section 1 of the U.S. Constitution, the Electoral College, would not only be a violation of the public servant's oath of office to uphold and defend Article 2, Section 1, it also is prima facie evidence of criminal perjury and an act of treason against the United States as well. The oath of office, both state and federal, prohibits any public servant from promoting and or attempting to change our Republican form of government, tamper with the Bill of Rights, or make any changes to the U.S. Constitution not in compliance with the Constitution and their oath of office. In a nutshell, Article 5 cannot be used to circumvent the U.S. Constitution. Okay, if this is true, how can a state pass legislation that circumvents Article 5 of the United States Constitution? Well, it's simple. It can't. The amendment process contained in Article 5 cannot be altered, abolished, or nullified by any state legislation, period. You know, the states gave up that right when they ratified the U.S. Constitution and entered into the Union. All, and I mean all, of these national popular voting laws are unconstitutional on their face and are nothing more than a soft coup, an unconstitutional attempt to alter, democratize our Republican presidential election process and to amend the U.S. Constitution in a manner not authorized by it. National popular voting laws are nothing more than election tampering by the states, and election tampering on the level of treason. This is going to cause a constitutional crisis for the 2020 presidential election, and will most likely, if the courts do not put a stop to it, put the president in a position that will force him to declare a national emergency, a state of martial law, perhaps. You see, there can be no lawful constitutional election in the United States without the Electoral College, period. End of story. That's the law. Any other process is illegal, it's unconstitutional, and is clearly an act of treason. It is literally an overthrow of our country, an overthrow of the republic. Once the Electoral College process is ignored by a state, that state becomes an enemy to its citizen. It becomes an enemy to the entire nation. A domestic enemy is what we call that. Why? Because the state is denying its citizens their constitutionally protected right to a Republican form of government as guaranteed by Article 4, Section 4 of the United States Constitution, and their constitutionally protected right to a fair and just presidential election pursuant to Article 2, Section 1 of the United States Constitution, the Electoral College process. If any national popular voting law is allowed to stand, there cannot and will not be a valid presidential election in the United States of America anymore. It's impossible. Article 2, Section 1 of the U.S. Constitution is incompatible with any national popular voting law. Why? Because national popular voting laws diametrically oppose Article 2, Section 1 of the U.S. Constitution. National popular voting laws are unconstitutional, period. End of story. National popular voting laws cannot supersede Article 2, Section 1 of the U.S. Constitution. They have no legal effect on anyone. They are nothing more than a tool of tyranny, a tool used to tamper with our presidential election process, a tool to overturn constitutional presidential elections. That's what they are. National popular voting laws create a situation that totally breaks down our Republican form of government, totally breaks down the entire presidential electoral process. It forces every U.S. citizen to be subject to a foreign and alien form of government, and I'm talking about democracy here. Can't get any more foreign and alien than that. It denies every citizen in this country their constitutionally protected right to vote for a U.S. president. Now, this is a constitutional crisis beyond the definition of a constitutional crisis. Until the courts suppress this insurrection, suppress this rebellion, suppress this democratic coup d'etat, there can be no presidential election, period. That's a fact, folks. You can't have an election with these laws being enacted in every one of these states. It's going to turn the whole system upside down. The 2020 presidential election is going to be a constitutional nightmare, creating chaos and unrest in the streets. I'm not kidding when I say this. A total breakdown of civil government is going to occur at both the state and the national level. A total breakdown of our presidential election process. Not good. Not good at all. Now, we must gain control of the situation before the 2020 presidential election. Now, the treason is already underway. The presidential electoral process has been unconstitutionally altered and abolished by many of the states already by passing these laws. This is a state of emergency. This is an attack on the republic. This is an active democratic coup d'etat, a takeover of our country, the destruction of the republic. And it's already, and I've said it before, but it's already a constitutional crisis. Even though the voting hasn't started, this is a constitutional crisis. These laws being enacted are a constitutional crisis in themselves. Now, if this problem isn't solved before Election Day, the presidential election in 2020 will be in shambles. There's no other way for this to turn out. This will cause a state of emergency in this country beyond your wildest imagination, requiring the president to take extraordinary measures. Measures that might even rise to the level of martial law. This is high treason, insurrection, and rebellion, and must be suppressed before it's too late. The perpetrators, or should I call them traitors, that are responsible for the passing of these national popular voting laws must be arrested and charged with perjury and treason. This is serious, folks. Constitutional law must be restored. Civil government, both state and federal, must be operating pursuant to the U.S. Constitution. The Electoral College process must be fully operational in all 50 states before the 2020 presidential election. Now, in my opinion, the Democratic Party is the party of treason, insurrection, and rebellion. Democracy has no place in our republic. Our nation's founding fathers hated democracy. Thomas Paine, the father of the American Revolution, said this about democracy. He said, quote, "A democracy is the vilest form of government there is," unquote. And I couldn't agree with him more. The Democratic Party is the most vile and disgusting party to ever emerge from the mind of a reprobate. They are pissing on the graves of every patriotic American that died fighting the communists, the socialists, the fascists, the Nazis, or any other scum government that hates our freedoms. They piss on the U.S. Constitution and they piss on our Republican form of government. Democrats are by far the most traitorous anti-American trash on the planet. They will stop at nothing until they have completely destroyed everything that we patriots have fought and died for. Domestic enemies, every last one of them, hell-bent on overthrowing the republic and turning our country into a third world, democratic, socialist, communist cesspool. I am the Ghetto Man. Thank you for watching. If you're politically correct, then you're legally wrong. And if you're not part of the solution, then you are the problem. Please subscribe to my BitChute channel and please share.